Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome, everybody. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing quite well. Interesting, all kinds of interesting stuff happening today, isn't there?
It's popping. It is certainly
Yeah.
popping here in early April across global supply chain and global business, and it's gorgeous. Just out to my right is our windows here, and it is a gorgeous April day here in the Metro Atlanta area.
You can see the sun sneaking in under the shutters here. Plantation shutters are there. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. And we got a great conversation teed up here today. So today's show, we're continuing our really popular series, Supply Chain Today and Tomorrow, with Mike Griswold with Gartner. So get your questions and your comments ready. Mike is a guru, as we've gotten lots of feedback from everybody around. Today, Greg, we're talking about top priorities, the top of the top priorities for new chief supply chain officers.
Yeah, I mean, appropriate in a lot of ways. Not only new, like people who have been experienced, but people who are new to the industry. So many people are coming to the supply chain industry from elsewhere. So much happening, and of course, we're undergoing this incredible generational transformation that necessitates us reevaluating everything. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, reevaluate everything, cancel all assumptions, question everybody. So
that's right.
An intriguing time to be
acknowledge reality, but refuse to be bound by it.
I've heard that before. Where have I heard that? Great conversation teed up. Outstanding conversation. I want to share a couple of things before we get going, before we say hello to a few folks, wonderful folks that have joined us in the comments. So today's episode, Greg, on the main channel, Supply Chain Now. If you're not subscribed, go find it wherever you get your podcast from and click subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Anissa Mathana, CEO, Pioneer Service Incorporated. You talk about passionate for all things manufacturing. This interview, I had to go drink a cool drink after we were done. It was such a passion fueled perspective. So much passion fueled perspective. Is that a word? Is that a phrase?
But passion fueled, yes, it's hyphenated word. But somebody put it in the comments. Peter Bollet, give us the appropriate appropriate grammar there.
But what a wonderful interview. Her journey, her foray into starting a manufacturing operation, growing that over the last almost 30 years, and how much give forward that Anissa is doing for a critical industry. It was a pleasure to be a part of this.
Very cool. Looks like she's got a good idea there. Oh.
Yes.
That's a microphone, isn't it? Sorry.
So check out episode 610 on the main channel, but that's not the only good things, good resources we've got for folks. Gregory.
Yeah.
Mastermind Live, spring 2021. Tell us about that, Greg.
Well, on the undercard, on the upper card, Kelly Barner and I are going to be duking it out about supply chain versus procurement. No, this is fantastic. Kelly and Philip Idison at Art of Procurement are bringing this to us and just sharing a ton about procurement. And man, as if I didn't know procurement was a hot topic. I think I may have shared this with folks maybe late last week. We are exploring a ton of procurement tech, and Kelly and I actually talked on Saturday about a company or two that are out there in the marketplace making moves. This is an incredible opportunity, and I think this industry is finally, with the guidance of people like Philip and Kelly, is finally ready to make some transformational changes that will enable a lot of growth for companies and eliminate a lot of risk, like we saw for so many companies with procurement during this seismic societal disruption.
Yes. And even better news, it's free to join. So April 13th and 14th, you can go to artofprocurement.com/mastermind live. We can drop that in the comments. But y'all check that out.
You Americans have no excuse. You have till May 17th to file your taxes. So it's not like you're under the gun on April 13th or 14th. So be there.
That's right. All right. Let's say hello to a few folks here. Simon says, passion fueled. Sounds like a fruit-based energy drink. I need one of those right now, Simon. It's been a busy week, but I agree. So welcome again, Simon. Love your sense of humor on these. Kavan is with us.
There he is.
He who has coined the new phrase, the new abnormal. So Kavan, great to have you. Mahesh via LinkedIn, great to see you here. Of course, Amanda and Clay and Natalie are behind the scenes making it happen. Great to have you here. Srinivas is back with us via LinkedIn. Hello from India, he says. Adele is with us. Abdul Rahman, right? I think I got that right.
That's good. Yeah.
Via LinkedIn. Great to have you with us here today. Dahing is with us, and Dahing was with us the other day. I think he hails from China, and it's great to have you here on today's live stream. Felicia Prisbilla.
Holy mackerel, there she is.
The Reverse Logistics Association is with us.
Every time I love seeing her headshot, because I just think of her standing on a beach, and that just makes me feel better. Right?
We all need to be standing on a beach with our favorite.
Amen, brother. That is so true.
We're foreshadowing. Here's what that's called. We're foreshadowing just a bit. So y'all sit tight as we talk lightning round with Mike Griswold. Peter is back with us. He says, the floor guy is here making a ruckus, so the closed captions will come in handy while he does his final prep for cement and membrane installation. Man, sounds like a big project there.
Gosh, I hope it's not too late. In-floor heating is a godsend and an energy saver, Peter Bullet.
Energy tips. The more you know. Powered by Supply Chain Now. Mervin is with us via LinkedIn from Dublin. Mervin, great to have you with us here today. Pratik is back with us. Great to see you. Victor via LinkedIn. Appreciate that feedback. Love to have you here with us today. And Gary Skinner. Hello from beautiful Pacific Northwest. And Gary, congrats. I believe you kicked off a new podcast. So,
wow,
that is cool. Awesome to see. All right. So, folks, we have got to dive into our guests here today, the one and only Mike Griswold, Vice President Analyst with Gartner. All right, Mike, good afternoon. How you doing?
Good. I'm glad you provided all the context on the cement and membrane comment, because that could have gone a whole lot of different directions.
You know, Greg never ceases to amaze me just how much he knows about everything. Actually, the two of y'all. But it's so neat to have you back. We've really enjoyed this series. We've kept it, running into the new year, and we've gotten a ton of feedback, Mike, from all that you share. So welcome back here today.
Oh, thanks. Always enjoy spending time with everyone.
It feels like the right time of year to be sharing time with you, Mike.
Well, yeah. I mean, the hoops ended Monday. Masters starts tomorrow. I mean, does it after Sunday, the Masters, I go into basically a sports hibernation because I'm not a baseball guy. I'm not an NBA guy. So this is pretty much my last real attention to sports for a while.
Till, I'm guessing, around the 4th of July when the U.S. Open is played. Yeah?
Yes.
You U.S. Open fan?
Yes.
That's good.
So I'll keep my eye on golf, but other than that...
sorry, that's Father's Day, isn't it?
The major sports for me are pretty much done on Sunday.
Yeah. Not a tennis fan, are you?
No, I am not.
Darn it.
So, Greg, where are we going to, as we keep going down the warm up here, we've got the lightning round. We're dusting off and breaking it back out for Mike Griswold. What are we going to be talking with Mike about today?
So we've talked about the hoops final. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Masters, and as if that isn't enough, and gosh, don't you think it ought to be, we're going to talk about National Beer Day, right? Today is National Beer Day in the States. So I'm going to hit Mike with some heavy topics, like what is your, first of all, I know your favorite adult beverage is not beer, but
correct.
And I'd love to talk about that too, because I think it is it's a worthy beverage as well. But when you do, I know you don't often drink beer, Mike Griswold, but when you do, what beer do you prefer?
Well, it's interesting. My wife and I have been watching a lot of streaming shows, and you get the same ads all the time. And I was getting Modelo ads all the time.
Oh yeah.
So I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to try it. I love it. So now I have a refrigerator full of Modelo. I like it because it comes in the smaller bottles.
Yeah.
So if you only drink, one of those, you don't feel quite as guilty. But Modelo actually, I'm a big fan of that. Before that, it was Heineken Light. I like the Heineken Light.
Okay.
But those would be, if someone said, hey, we're going to get a beer, what do you want? It would probably be one of those two.
So Modelo Especial or Negra Modelo, the dark?
The lighter one.
Okay.
Yes.
Both are delicious, by the way, right? And we may have been talking about beer a little bit pre-show, Scott. And as I said, I think Mexican beers, there are some fantastic Mexican beers, and Modelo is right at the top of the list. So excellent choice. But all right, you have to share. We have to give equal time here, Mike. I know that beer is not your favorite adult beverage.
Yep.
So even though it is National Beer Day, what is your go-to?
Yeah, I've become a Scotch guy. So
Okay.
I like a good Macallan, and I also have found there's an island off of Scotland that has 8 distilleries. One of them is a place called, I'm looking at it right now, Lafroig, Laphroaig. I know I'm butchering the Scottish.
Yep.
But what I like about that is when you buy a bottle of that Scotch, you can register, and they give you it's heated through peat moss, and there's a huge peat moss right next to the distillery. They will give you your own 1 foot square of moss. You can go online, you can see it through Google Earth. So I now have 1 square foot of a peat bog on an island off the coast of Scotland. Trust me, I will have more of that as the year goes on.
Outstanding. So do you like the peaty scotches better?
I do. I like the way they smell. I like the way they taste. Yeah.
So I'm going to butcher it too, Mike, but I've heard it said, and it's something like Lafroig or something like that. It's very Gaelic, but I don't even attempt it. I just go that one.
Yeah.
Wow, man, soaking up the knowledge here today. Mike, what's your favorite?
Scott, maybe one real quick thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a lot more expensive than Malacups. We talked about those a couple shows ago, so it's a little bit pricier than the Malacups.
That is a good point. You never know what's going to generate the most comments on these live streams. Last month, Greg and Mike, hot dog preferences and rules and regulations generated a ton of comments. So,
right.
Yeah.
But Greg, from here, we're going to golf, right?
Yeah. Well, of course, under ordinary circumstances, today would be the par 3 tournament of the Masters. So we would, at the end of the day, know who definitely was not going to win the Masters, because I think it is still true, Mike. You can check me on this. No one has ever won the par 3 tournament and then won the Masters, though a few years ago, Tom, sorry, Watson? I keep wanting to say Tom Kite, but it's not. Oh my gosh, who am I thinking? From Kansas City. Oh my gosh, played when Jack Nicklaus played. Watson won the par 3 at like 58 years old or something like that, and then almost won the Masters. So, but that's as close as we've ever come. So, who's your pick for the Masters this year?
So I have 2. I was torn between Justin Thomas and Patrick Reed. I think Patrick Reed's game, he's a past winner. He knows what it takes. Thomas is playing well. To me, though, the hands down sentimental favorite has to be Jordan Spieth. The struggles he's had to win last week, he's won already there. He, to me, would be the sentimental favorite. But I think JT and Patrick Reed are the 2 that I'm looking at.
I got to agree. All 3 of those are great picks, as they always are. Of course, I'm always rooting for Phil. I know this could be the last season he plays on the main tour. Who knows what he's going to do? But I got to tell you, I've watched Lee Westwood, and when you talk sentimental, it's hard for me to think of it that way. But when you talk sentimental, I really think there is a good case. Did he even qualify? Did he score?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought he did.
He's 28th in the world, so he's in.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's played really well. He's come up second in 2 incredible tournaments against some really tough competition, and competition that was definitely on a run in both of those tournaments. He's got his partner, his girlfriend, I guess, on the bag for him. He's playing looser than he ever has, and I don't know that his game fits Augusta that well, but if there's anytime he's going to break through, I think it's right now.
He's an easy guy to root for. I just don't trust him on Sunday.
Yeah,
but he's definitely an easy guy to root for.
Yeah, no doubt.
Simon says it would be lovely to see Lee Westwood win, and I would echo a lot of what you shared there, Greg and Mike. But you know what I love about the NCAA's, the brackets and the basketball tournament, as I do the Masters, as I do about baseball, is it gives us a little bit of normalcy back, and we all are craving that for sure. Hey, Ben Harris is with us here, the Metro Atlanta Chamber, Supply Chain City. He would love for Westwood to win.
Well, so Ben, you need to put your pick in there as well, because I'm interested. If anyone knows, Ben knows.
That's right. Okay.
Don't play him for money, Mike, just to be clear.
So from the Masters of Golf to the Masters of Supply Chain, we have our opportunity to put a finger on the pulse with a guru across global supply chain each month with Mike Griswold. And today, and by the way, hello, David. Great to see you here today. Today we're talking about, there's been a plethora of new chief supply chain officers across industries. It's a great development here in recent years, right? We've reported on a wide variety of new organizations that have newly named CSCOs, as it were. Mm-hmm. So Gartner, Mike, released a report that got our attention here not too long ago, entitled "The Top 10 Supply Chain Priorities for the New Chief Supply Chain Officer." So things that really focus in on really in the first 100 days. And it really is it triggered a lot of internal conversation here, and we're so grateful to have you here sharing some of your top. I think we promoted it, Greg, as top 3, but we may get a bonus 1 or 2 here today. So, Mike, walk us through a couple of your top priorities for new CSCOs. Let's start with your first one.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we take one step back and we talk to companies about this all the time. I mean, if you think about how you want to prioritize, I think the way to think about it is in 3 buckets, people, process, and technology. And I think those 10 priorities tend to land in all 3. I think the one that I would focus on first is, the people in the process. So one of the 10 is the supply chain strategy and vision. I think that, to me, is probably where everyone, at least in my opinion, probably needs to start. So as you're coming into a new supply chain, trying to get the lay of the land in terms of how does the supply chain strategy and vision align with the corporate strategy? What is the corporate strategy and how does the supply chain enable that? I think one of the things that the 3 of us and the listeners have talked about is the role of the supply chain. Hopefully, as you're coming into this job, into a new supply chain, you've already done the homework to understand what the role is. My advice to folks is, if you're looking at an organization, hopefully before you've landed there, and their role of the supply chain is basically a cost center, I would suggest that I wouldn't engage in that discussion a whole lot longer, to be perfectly honest.
Seek career advancement elsewhere.
Yes, Greg, that's a very good way to put it. I think, when we talk to companies, more and more what we're hearing is the vision of the supply chain is to be an enabler for growth, a driver of innovation, and for some people, it's going to be their competitive weapon. If that's the chair that you've landed in, I think first, congratulations. And second, those are the things that you want to think about, right? How do we align with the strategy, and what do we see as the role of the supply chain, that you're now going to be leading? What is that role today, and what do you want to evolve it to over your time there? I mean, that to me, Scott and Greg, is the first one.
So, Greg, I'd love for you to piggyback on that. I've been fortunate to rub elbows with what I'll call a visionary business leader in Greg White. I've learned a ton from that. So I bet this first one where we're starting really resonates with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen, I'm going to name a company, Henry Schein, that I worked at before my technology company was a technology company. We did consulting because I didn't have any funding. So I needed money just to pay for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And at Henry Schein, they had such a forward view of the supply chain that it became and drove the accountability and the process culture of the entire company. And I think that's the kind of strategy that companies need to be aspiring towards. And that's what a chief supply chain officer, I think, needs to be aware of, that she or he could actually shape the culture, the customer experience, the brand identity, certainly the brand identity, either by action or by mistake. Your supply chain shapes the brand identity of your company.
Well said.
And I think that you need to acknowledge that, you need to embrace that, and you need to address that. And then you can learn from the other business entities, the other departments in the organization, but you can also teach them a lot. Because since we are held so accountable, we are so driven by data, we are so driven by sound process, we are so driven by transparency and interdepartmental and inter-enterprise interaction, technology, all of those things. And we have to be so disciplined, because if we fail, the entire company fails. So absolutely, strategy has to be right at the top of the list. And to go to role, as Mike said earlier, if you don't have a seat at the table, then you better demand one, earn one, or find another table.
Yeah, agreed.
So Gary agrees as well. Strategy is the roadmap. So agree. He says he really appreciates all the experience being shared here, learning, collaborating, and growing. Let's see. Mervin asked an interesting question, and I bet there's a lot of parallels. I know we're talking to here today.
Here we go.
The chief supply chain officer, new CSCOs.
Yeah.
But Mike, do a lot of these apply to the chief procurement role as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think these apply to anyone that basically has that C in their title, right? When you are the chief X, whatever that fill in the blank is, I think people are looking to you to drive those three areas: people, process, and technology. So whether you're a chief supply chain officer, chief procurement officer, when I think about the top 25 company briefings we did, because we're in the middle of that season now,
Right.
There's a chief customer officer emerging.
Right.
And, all of those C levels, I think, need to be able to articulate, the strategy, the vision, and the role of their organization. I mean, if I'm a chief procurement officer, I need to be able to articulate what is the role of our procurement department. Yeah, I have no procurement experience, but my sense is, Greg, I'm sure you can elaborate on this. My sense is, if your only job in procurement, or you're only seen as the people that buy paper and staplers, then yeah, you probably need another table. Because I think that role is emerging to become much more strategic, much more enabling. I think we're also looking for a lot more agility out of that particular part of the business as well.
Yeah, and early on, you're dead on, Mike. And early on in this crisis, we talked a lot about how similar the business issues are, including that seat at the table, are for procurement, and yet how different the roles can be. But at the same time, there is an aspect of procurement that applies directly to supply chain, right? If you are procuring the parts that or the raw materials or the componentry that makes up a product that you are creating a finished good from, that's procurement for supply chain. If you are procuring the conveyors and the internal systems and the technology and the things that either create or store or move the product, then that's procurement. And the esteem of that organization and the woes and joys of that organization, both procurement and supply chain, they're very, very much aligned. So
well,
I think it's duly applicable, though the business processes or the business goals to some extent are very much different.
Yeah, I agree, Greg. If you think about the SCORE model, right, that's been around forever, and we think about that in terms of talking to organizations about the span of control of their supply chain, plan, source, make, deliver, all being part of the supply chain, that sourcing piece, to your point, is incredibly important.
Yeah.
Well said.
No doubt.
All right, I want to share a couple of comments, and then we're going to move to your second priority, Mike. First off, Bob is back with us after quite some time. Bob, hope this finds you well, and we look forward to reconnecting soon. Ale maybe is with us via Facebook. Great to see you here today. Look forward to your POV. Ben says corporate goals and KPIs have to be the primary driver for strategy. Simon really talks about the rising sea levels. You know, Mike, you mentioned this is for anyone with a C in their name, especially those that aspire for more. Mahesh says smooth environment is very important to run the process smoothly. He mentioned how sustainability in our planet is a big part of supply chain strategy these days. And Ben agreed. Ben said, he referenced Rick McDonald, Chief Supply Chain Officer at Clorox, who said each of these repeatedly on his previous appearances with us here. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
if you think about, we're about to talk to another Chief Supply Chain Officer tomorrow. If you think about people who are great examples of leadership of what Mike is talking about here, Rick McDonald, Sandra McQuillan come immediately to mind, right? There are other greats as well. We've talked to them, but those are the two that I think we know the best, right?
Excellent. And to that end, we'll have Sandra McQuillan live with us tomorrow at 12 noon, Chief Supply Chain Officer with Mondelez International. So y'all bring your POVs for Sandra as well. Okay. So Mike, so much to cover, so little time. What will be your second priority here?
Yeah, I think it's going to be on the people side. And that's everything from understanding in this new environment that we're working in for the foreseeable future, from a skill set perspective, from a role perspective, from a DE&I perspective, what have you as a Chief Supply Chain Officer inherited on the people and the culture side? I think it's great to have the strategy. It's great to be able to align on paper and in PowerPoint to a corporate strategy, but you actually have to have the skills and the people and the culture to actually do the work and do the work well. So I think, one of the things that we're finding in talking to organizations is, this whole dynamic of working at home, working remotely, the impact that that's had in potentially a culture shift. I mean, there's a number of it's hard for me even to think that I'm uttering these words, but there are a number of retailers that I talk to on a pretty regular basis who are now quite comfortable working remotely. I think if we had rewound the clock and said, okay, we're going to have a pandemic, what industry is going to struggle to work from home? I think we all would have said retail, but that's not the case. They've adjusted, they're productive. And I think what a lot of them have realized is our culture can survive remotely. Maybe we don't want to be 100% remote, but I'm hearing more and more people say, hey, whenever we get back to normal or abnormal, as someone has coined already, we might be 50%, work at home. Right. Which is, I think, more than we ever would have thought retail would have gotten to. So to me, it's an understanding of the people from a skill set and your culture, and is that where you want it to be?
So there's a quick, just a month or two ago, there was a Wall Street Journal article citing research that 80% of professionals prefer to continue after the pandemic working from home at least 3 days a week. So kind of to that hybrid model, Mike.
3 days a week. Wow.
Yeah, at least 3 days a week. So Greg, and also one other clarification, and Mike, I really appreciate how you in each of your appearances, you talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's certainly what C-level officers have got to keep front and center to not just talk about, but act on. So I love how you talk about, you refer to that quite a bit. Greg, let's talk about what's your take on what Mike just shared?
I mean, people are who makes it happen, right? Technology can only do so much. And, I think we're starting to see a more rapid evolution of technology doing the mundane, the repeatable, sometimes even the highly, highly intellectual, but creative and emergency. And, as I often talk about with Scott, you and your fellow veterans from the military, being able to make life and death decisions instantaneously with inadequate information, that is a uniquely human condition. AI needs a ton of data to make the decisions, right? It's like teaching a child. It has to have enough experience to have learned how to solve these problems. So, of course, people are absolutely critical to this. And of course, culture is the business to me. I know we say supply chain is the business, but culture is the business, because the way that you either enable or allow your organization to operate becomes your identity, your effectiveness, your productivity. It becomes all of those things that make people happen. And even if technology is involved in your company, people still make the decision to select one technology over another, right? So absolutely critical to nurture that culture. And again, for chief supply chain officers, for any C-suite, as Mike is talking about, you have to be very intentional about culture.
Yeah.
Culture happens. Either you as a leader make it happen or you allow it to happen. It's much, much better to make it happen so that you have some control over that culture.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Scott.
Just a couple of quick comments. I hear a lot enablement, right? Technology and how it enables people and to do their job better and to be more happy about it. And you look at any study out there. A recent one I came across was based on Oxford research. Happy employees, right, where there's a nice positive culture that's deliberately created by leadership and all the people in it. They're 13% more productive. And that's just one data point according to Oxford research. So really important aspect in the C-suite. Mike, what were you going to follow up on?
Yeah, I think the culture, when I reflect on kind of where our research has gone and conversations with clients, the emerging attributes of culture, to Greg's point, that you want to make happen are around agility, responsiveness, and innovation. Kind of not necessarily in that order, but when you look at a company's culture, it has to foster innovation, which means you have to be accepting and tolerant to failure, because not everything you innovate on is going to work, right? Even if Amazon based its success on the Fire phone, right, they wouldn't be around. So but that's the culture. Right. I mean, the culture of Amazon is one where we're going to try a bunch of stuff. It's not all going to work, and we're okay with that. Right. We also, though, need this idea, particularly in today's environment, around how do we build agility and responsiveness. A lot of companies have, taken a look at some of the things that we probably would never label as agile, like the budgeting process, like the capital expenditure process, right? All of those things are now becoming a lot more agile because they have to. Right, yeah. To Greg's point, we have to make decisions faster. We need data for that, but we also, I think we're finding, and I think part of this, because of the remote nature of work now, we are empowering people more, and we are pushing decisions down lower than we ever have before. I think partly because we've had to. I think a byproduct of that, maybe a positive unintended consequence, is I think companies are now making decisions faster.
Yeah, well said. Empowerment and enablement, two of the critical E words. There's plenty of others, Greg, we use a lot around here. Let me share a couple comments here. Simon says, be experts in your own data. I love that. LinkedIn, and I'm not sure, Clay or Amanda, let me know who this is, says for far too long, people and work and culture have been seen as separate initiatives. Excellent point. Big Show Bob Bova is with us here today. If more management stays working remotely, workers at the point of action become even more valuable. They need the power to suggest the tech to help the most. excellent point here. David says it's more of the triangle. Patrick Van Hole, I guess he said 1 week on his last live stream appearance with us. You take out one aspect of the triangle, it's going to collapse. It's like the good old three-legged stool, right? Yep. That we all reference quite a bit. Let's see. Oh, that was Patrick Van Hole. How about that? So this up here, who said this? People working culture, separate initiatives. That was Patrick Van Hole. Patrick, great to have you with us here today. And then finally, Peter says the office and work environments can also be a me first mentality, which stifles growth of great talent from below upwards. I've worked hard to lift my past colleagues to higher heights and do not see too many others doing just that. I think I navigated through his
That's pretty good. You got to remember he's doing that while a jackhammer or something is going on.
Where's the hammer hat around here?
But, those are all really incredible points. I think the culture of innovation has to allow failure, right? And as you said, Amazon, that's one of their key core values. One of their other core values, however, is also be right a lot, literally. So I think we want to be careful that right to fail or to have failures doesn't become the right to fail. And it also must not become the right to enter into these innovations carelessly. It still requires diligence. It still requires forethought, but we don't want analysis by paralysis, right?
Excellent point.
As my great uncle used to say, do something if you do it wrong.
Well, because not making a decision, Greg, I think we've talked with Mike plenty of times, is making a decision, right?
To quote the great Canadian philosopher, Geddy Lee, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice.
Nice. And by the way, I want to give Patrick Van Hole is with Kinaxis, one of Gartner's Magic Quadrant recognizees.
They just in supply chain planning, right?
Supply chain planning.
Yeah.
So welcome and thanks for being here with us here today, Patrick. And then I love this quote here. Bob Bova says, John Wooden said, "If you're not making mistakes, then you're not doing anything. I'm positive that a doer makes mistakes." And then finally, comment from AA, from the air capital of the world, Greg, the home of Greg White, Wichita, Kansas. It is good to see renewed attention on the PPT, people, process, and technology. And he gives a wink. Greg, you have to do the wink. Technology becoming more of a dominant strategic tool. And he's got a hammer in there, man. AA throwing out the emojis.
Yeah, man, he's using emoticons.
All right, technology becoming more of a dominant strategic tool for CXOs, the whole C-suite and Industry 4.0, seismically disrupted, quoting Greg, by the pandemic. A lot of good stuff there.
Yeah.
All right. There's so much to cover when we talk about leadership and the C-suite. Mike, what is your third priority here today?
Yeah, I think let's round out the people, process, and technology with the technology component, which is, we've been talking about at Gartner for a number of years, this idea of digital transformation. And I think that is, when you land in, a new chief supply chain officer role, I think one of the things you want to explore is, what are we doing digitally? What does digital mean to our organization, and what are the transformational capabilities that it can bring us? Typically those land in areas which will, I'm sure, be familiar to everyone. Big data, advanced analytics, machine learning and AI, all those types of things. But we're also seeing that digital transformation start to move into areas around automation, right? Greg talked a little bit about, automating decisions, the role that data has to play in educating AI and machine learning applications so they can make good decisions. But we're seeing a lot of interest in automation. Typical areas, distribution centers and those types of things in terms of automating those activities. But we're also finding people looking to augment some of the more customer experience types of activities, whether it's call centers, whether it's application testing, those types of things. So, I think sitting down once you're, in your new seat and understanding what digital initiatives are underway. And then I think that always has to be tested against what we already talked about. How does that digital transformation align with our strategy and the role of the supply chain? And how does it align with the people, right? Both from the perspective of, do we have the right people, right, to move us forward digitally, but also, if we're going down the road of automation, what impact is that going to have on people, and how are we going to handle that? Are we going to handle that through upskilling and retraining and re-education, or are we going to handle it in some other way? So that, to me, this whole idea of digital transformation starts to knit the other two together. And it's also one of those things, and Greg would like your thoughts on this. It seems to me to be, digital transformation is a very personal company type of answer. If I'm, a retailer, my digital transformation may be very different than a consumer products company. And even within industry, it may be different. So I think it's important to take the time to understand those first two and then apply it to, this idea of digital transformation.
Yeah, well, I think you're dead on there. Of course, what else would I say? You're Mike Griswold. And what else would we expect? But I think you're right. The last point you made in industry, because I think about the industry I came from, auto parts, and the industry you came from, grocery, and I think about how by force, really, we had to be so technologically savvy, because if we were out of stock, we were out of business, right? If you don't have, way back in the day, if you didn't have a starter for a 72 Impala, even though they were all 20 years old or whatever, people thought you were an idiot, right? And we had come of age in a time frame, and this is also what makes the other point you made, the digital transformation, so personal or so company oriented, is that when your company comes of age, when your company matures or reaches a level of sophistication, matters, right? Because technology, for instance, POS and perpetual inventory in particular, didn't exist when Albertsons was in its fledgling days, and we came of age at a later time when it was both available and absolutely necessary. The supply chain, or even the merchandising and store operations chain of grocery, is substantially different. And so you could rely on, at one point, like they did in the general store days, the vendors to come in and go, you got enough Cheerios or you don't, and we're going to make sure you get more Coca-Cola or whatever product. The vendors were engaged in that. So that actually hindered the advancement of technology in some companies. We saw the pain of that in spades during the early days of COVID. And I think, that's a good example of how even within industry, you juxtapose those and you have those different needs, levels of application and capabilities within a company. And that's what makes it sort of personal. Also, to AA's point, right? You have to think of technology or even digital transformation as just a hammer. It's just a better tool to enable your people to get the job done. So what a great emoji to pick there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and take a step further. It's like Kevin L. Jackson shared with us yesterday. You got to fine tune those tools, right? You got to make sure the inputs and the specs and what they're how you set them to work. All that the work is put into that. Otherwise, you're just putting a big sloppy Band-Aid on something that ain't going to help you at all.
Well, and that goes back to Mike's point, which is to stitch all of that culture and people and strategy and role of supply chain together, right?
Yes.
It needs to address all of those constituencies.
Here's the challenge that I see, and Greg would like your perspective since you came from that side of the house. One of the things I'm observing is I think the technology providers in general are doing Kinaxis is a great example. And I'm not saying that just because Patrick's on and he used to be, a colleague of mine at Gartner. Kinaxis is one of those companies that has a really good digital vision for their clients. And I think the technology market in general is doing a pretty good job of laying out what a digital transformation can look like for a company that partners with them. My caution to folks, though, is you need to identify what your vision looks like. And you can't necessarily assume that the vision a technology provider has is one that will work for you, which is why I come back to, you need to do your homework in those first two areas and find the match between what you want your role of supply chain to be, the capabilities and culture you have as a company, and pressure test that against a technology provider's roadmap. We are not lacking for roadmaps. I think what our real challenge is finding that match, kind of like a matchmaker, right? This is my vision. Here's who it aligns the best to, and because you can go horribly wrong trying to take your company into a digital transformation that's not right for you.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we've all seen examples of that.
Yeah,
T-shirtism.
If you think of ERPs as a euphemism in the past for digital transformation, we've seen it go horribly wrong.
Oh, sure.
Literally bankrupting and companies in that process. So absolutely. But yeah, to your point, Mike, and look, I just want to be clear. This episode not brought to you by Kinaxis, but in as much as we've had a lot of interaction with Kinaxis, I think that, the discussion I had with John Sicard, their CEO, our violent agreement discussion is that he encourages his team. He even challenges his customers to tell them the problem and the solution that they want, and then figure out whether Kinaxis or whatever technology is the right solution for that. And that is an absolutely critical thing for a chief supply chain officer, to kind of bring it full circle here, for chief supply chain officer to do when thinking about digital transformation. Understand, as you have already tied together, Mike, strategy and the role of the supply chain organization and the people and the culture of the organization, and the goals and other objectives and market dynamics and constraints and opportunities and vision of the company itself, to figure out and have a distinct point of view when you're talking to technology providers, so that you can assess whether their roadmap, their capabilities, their implementation methodology, all of the things that go into a digital transformation, whether those fit your organization.
Yeah, I think, Greg, if an organization can articulate the answer to those first couple of questions and take that to a technology provider and say, hey, this is how I see our role, this is what I see us having from a capabilities and a culture perspective, that matchmaking becomes a whole lot easier. It's very easy to say this fits, this unfortunately does not fit. Without that work up front, you're asking for trouble.
All right.
I think that kind of information. Sorry, Scott, but I'm on a roll here. You ever seen Animal House?
Yeah,
he's rolling. I think that discussion that we have just had is why that communication of vision of what you want to accomplish is much more valuable than an RFP that says, do you have this feature? Do you have that feature? Do you have the other feature? Because the presumption is then that the company conducting, or the company expecting digital transformation, knows what they need to do, and what they really know, and this is 100% of the time the case, what they really know is what they want to accomplish. What is the outcome that they desire? And they don't know enough as a operating company to know what kind of features a technology needs. By the way, if you ever get an RFP, chances are very good it was written by your competitors, not by the company.
All right. So lots of T-shirt isms here today. So many. We have no shortage of roadmaps. Amen to that, Mike. If you're doing RFPs, your competitor wrote them. Excellent point there, Greg. Let me share a couple of other of these we got a lot of comments here I want to share. This is great perspective. So Alay says, in my country, Sudan in Africa, we must look at the energy availability, electricity, gasoline, before even thinking about digital transformation. Excellent point there.
Yeah,
that's a great point, and it's interesting because I'll just speak for myself. I mean, there are certain things that I take for granted when we talk about culture and roadmap, things we take for granted that we probably shouldn't, quite frankly. And that is a great example of, there are things, there's some things that we need to address first in terms of just, can we keep the lights on, that before we even worry about transformation. So that was a great point.
Well, Mike, Greg and I were on an event based in Pakistan. Greg, if you remember that, about a year ago, and we were taking a very similar path, talking about sustainability and innovation and digital transformation, and the same point was made. Greg, you remember that?
We're just trying to survive, right? I mean, it's really more about getting and consuming the basics than worrying about sustainability. At the same time, though, guys, think about this. In Sudan and other countries in Africa, they have solved problems with new technology where it does enable digital transformation. So it's certainly possible. For instance, 80% of the population of Africa is unbanked. So how do they bank? With their cell phone. If they want to buy a candy bar or whatever, right? If they want to do it at a bodega on the street, it's probably not called that in Africa, but they want to buy it. They can buy with their cell phone, and instead of having money in the bank, they essentially have money as credit on their cell phone bill that allows them to buy things. So, and we are the first world country with all these banks on street corners. Right. And we just finally got the opportunity to tap our credit card to be able to do that. By the way, I could do that 8 years ago in Europe. So there are advantages to having been a latecomer, kind of like the automotive versus grocery store example.
Right.
There are advantages. You just have to find them.
Right. And that's where we're going to find some of these solutions to, we were talking, Greg, online this morning about corrugated and cardboard and just out of control. We're going to look to these the latest generations in a variety of geographic communities across the globe. That's where these solutions to hit these old and new problems are going to come from. So thanks so much for joining us here today, Alay from Sudan. Let me share a couple quick comments as our time with Mike is running down here. Debbie says, I also think it's about letting go of control on management level and accept the talent of employees. Only then innovation and transformation will happen, even though the success ratio is smaller than the failure ratio is. I like Simon, keeping it simple. Create happy planners. Right.
Well, I think
that sounds like that's a direct message to his boss.
I think if every day is beer day, that will help.
Yeah.
Nice point.
It is the little things that count, Mike.
Yes.
Exactly.
All right. I got to share this from Kavan and one or two others. Kavan says, for making automated decisions, at first, we should determine if the system is closed or its input features are entirely known. Otherwise, we risk making infeasible or invalid decisions, which are fast but not reliable. But not reliable. I love that.
Yeah, that's it. Real quick, that's an interesting, a very interesting and spot on comment. I remember when I was at Shaw Supermarkets in the early days of an I2 strategist transportation modeling exercise. The model would spit out some really interesting network suggestions and transportation suggestions that were not feasible. So it's a great point around kind of the feasibility and kind of narrowing the scope of what you want of how you want an application to solve the problem.
Excellent point. And, and a baseball analogy to that, Mike. Our beloved Atlanta Braves are 0-4 for the season, and I've got a perfect fix. We need a Greg Maddux, we need a Fred McGriff, and we need a Mark Wohlers today. But it's a non-starter, and there's lots of that goes in business for sure. I want to share this from Bob Bova. He says, the biggest challenge to go digital transformation is time. This is a company-wide adoption to do all the analysis, take into consideration the culture and the future goals. The people I talk to are just overwhelmed, but it has to happen, he says. And that's oftentimes very true. Greg.
Agreed. You need an elephant. one bite at a time.
Amen. Amen. And I'll bring this back, and then we'll make sure folks know how to connect with Mike. Alay says, absolutely, Greg. Actually, it's been a problem for the government to control all the money transactions on the mobile credit between states and entities and all the countries that make up, of course, the continent of Africa. It's a great point there. Alay, we're going to have you back. We'll have to feature you on a live stream and really focus in on what's going on in Sudan. Okay. So as much as I'd love to grab some popcorn and a Diet Coke and watch y'all two talk and exchange perspectives, because we're only tackling 3
all day long.
Yeah, that, and I watch my Braves hopefully get their first win. There's 4-4 in the fourth, I think.
So here we are, totally engaged, Mike, and he's watching baseball.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
All right. So, Mike, always a pleasure. I mean, the comments are a simple testimony to just how neat and simple your perspective is. You know, your name came up, I think, Greg, on our live stream, or our neat little casual live stream to celebrate 600 episodes. And Mike, you were one of a handful of names that came up repeatedly. Amanda, who's with us here behind the scenes, was talking about just how simple you take these complex things are going on across industry, and then put it in a way and communicate it in a way that anyone can really understand and gather the important aspects. And I think it's a huge advantage for when leaders can do that, right? Make the complex things simple. So your ears may have burned just plumb off, Mike, on that last live stream.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
All right.
That's from years of trying to get me to understand as my analyst at Gartner. Years of trying. No, Greg. Yeah. No, it's this simple.
Yeah.
All right. So I believe, and if we have not dropped the link, I know we did on the live Twitter feed, but Amanda or Clay, if y'all drop in the link to download for free that report that highlights those things, there's one of the elements of that report that we won't be able to do justice here today, but I appreciated was, every CSCO hire is not the same. You have internal hires, you have external hires, you have veterans, you got companies where it's a brand new position, right? You got times where organizations will hire consultants, and of course the trust factor. So that they mentioned a couple of these things in the report. So y'all make sure we drop that in the comments. Looks like we already have. Okay. So Mike, beyond that link, and there's so much that y'all do at Gartner. How can folks connect with you and the Gartner organization?
Yeah, Mike.Griswold, Gartner.com, easiest way. I have been slowly working my LinkedIn acumen up slowly. So I'm a little bit more active there. I have a long ways to go. But I am working to bring myself into the 21st century as opposed to the 19th century as it relates to LinkedIn. So everyone be patient with me.
Well,
so go ahead.
You're a real influencer, regardless of your activity on LinkedIn. I mean, I think people understand that big corporations come to you. The top 25 supply chains in the world come to you for guidance on how to get better. So we appreciate, and we will wait patiently for you to share your gifts, Michael.
I think maybe next month I'll come with a big sandwich board. That's probably the easiest way for people to connect with me.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Hey, before we let Mike go, what do y'all want in the comments? Get it in the comments before we sign off here today, or shoot us a note. What would y'all like Mike to address when he comes back and spends time with us in May? We'd love to get your POV, and then we'll get Mike prepped and we'll be ready to go next month. So, Mike, always a pleasure. Really appreciate your time with us here today. Hope you enjoy what for many folks here in the States, at least, the spring break, of course, with Masters. Happy viewing. I hope you get a chance to get out and hit the little white ball with you and your wife. So hit them good later this week.
Hey, thanks, everyone. Always enjoy it. I'll see you next month.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much. Mike Griswold, Vice President, Analyst with Gartner. Greg, what a fast-moving, wild west. Always is, though.
I got to tell you something. I really miss being able to work with him almost every single day. I mean, he and the team at Gartner gave me a ton of insight and guidance into what goes on in retail and supply chain around the globe. Really, really talented. again, a practitioner move to being an analyst, and again, someone who is a real live influencer of business. Right?
Excellent point.
Those chief supply chain officers that are in that report listen to Mike every single day.
Mike was dropping so much knowledge that it short-circuited our swoosh machine.
I just thought about that. Yeah, we didn't even swoosh him. Yeah.
Swoosh machine. That doesn't come out too easily. But what a full session with Mike and Greg. I enjoyed your POV here today. Anytime you talk leadership, it can be such a passionate and wide-ranging discussion. And I'm glad we could have tackled all 10 of those priorities if we had just about another 7 hours, I think. What do you think?
I think it would have taken that. Yeah. Look, there's no shortage of knowledge from Mike and opinions from me, so it's going to take time. So,
well, ask and ye shall receive. T Squared already referencing the question we posed to the community. Hey, what do you want Mike Griswold to talk about? He says VMI, CPFR, is that collaborative
planning, forecasting, and replenishment. Wow, yes. That's a throwback.
Nice.
Yeah.
And reverse logistics. Well, hey, we'll see if Mike can address all of that. But T Squared, thanks for tuning in via YouTube, by the way. Our reverse logistics series will continue. Our next live stream with RLA, which Felicia is a big member of the team, will be the last Friday of this month. We're still nailing down the guests, so stay tuned. We had a wonderful conversation, Greg, with Becca Mines from Best Buy on the last episode.
Right. Man, again, not an advert, but what a great organization that has been at the forefront of all of this digital transformation for retail for over a decade, right? Think back to the term showrooming. If you've been in retail, you know showrooming, you know that Best Buy was at the forefront of that, and now at the forefront of digital commerce.
So hey, one last thing as we start to wrap here. We're a couple minutes over. I want to ask you about something. First off, Clay's dropping me updates on the Braves. It looks like the Braves have reclaimed the lead in middle of the second, 6-4. How about that?
Can we get a Royals score also, please?
Sure. They start at 1:10 Eastern time, so they'll be first pitch in about 8 minutes.
I think their record is slightly better than the Braves, isn't it, Scott?
It's not tough so far to do. All right, so Greg, we've got a neat live stream coming up in the last week of April. I think it's April 28th at 12 noon, and it's called Take Your Shot.
Take your shot.
Right. So if you had 45 seconds to put in a nutshell what that's about and why folks should tune in, what would that be, Greg?
Real live supply chain technology startups pitching to real live supply chain technology investors, founders, and experts, their company's story, possibly even seeking funding, and doing it all live in front of all of you. It's kind of like Shark Tank, except Bala G is not quite as nice as Mr. Wonderful. So buckle up, because these are real live, in the moment evaluations of real live businesses. There is no script. There's no behind the scenes agreements. Even like on Shark Tank, anything could happen. And it's a great learning experience, whether you are evaluating investments, whether you're making investments, whether you're just observing this crazy thing we call supply chain tech, or whether you are a founder and you want to know how to effectively pitch your company in 3 minutes.
Love that. All right, so folks, if that appeals to you as much as it does us, and as much as some of the feedback we got in the initial episode, tune in here on any of these 5 social channels, 12 noon Eastern time on Wednesday, April 28th. So it's a Tequila Sunrise show hosted here by Supply Chain Now, and you're not going to want to miss it. It's really fascinating to see the dance play out between those parties that Greg described. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much. I love the comments. I know we couldn't get to all of them. Mike, it stirs a lot of folks' leadership passions for sure. Hope this finds you well wherever you are. Have a wonderful week. Hey, on behalf of our entire team here, on behalf of Greg White and Amanda and Clay and Natalie, Scott Luton signing off for now. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed, and go Braves. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.